Okay. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're just finishing up a little bit of a lunch. We had to hurry through our lunch to get to this meeting. So we'll have to excuse everybody. We'll get there. All right. We'll call the meeting to order. Good afternoon, members of council, members of our staff that are joining us here in the council chambers today. It's great to have everyone together here on a beautiful sunny spring morning. How about that ice out there? Wasn't that great this morning? Anyway, nice to have everybody here. This is going to be a special council meeting in regards to the budget. The budget process is an ongoing, evolving piece of action that happens as a relationship between the council, the staff, and members of the public. And so this budget process, as you can appreciate, members of council, our staff meet for weeks, perhaps months ahead of time to prepare documents that are then presented to us to consider in a proposed budget. And so this process will allow us to review what the staff are recommending, as well as to consider things that members of the public through their councillors and deputy mayor have been asking or would like to see in our community. So the process we should all acknowledge is we're going to enter into a workshop session, and a workshop session will be that while we may have resolutions and motions in regards to the content of the meeting, the content of the budget, we have to all keep in mind that there are only 2 resolutions that will actually be active resolutions that'll be produced bylaws, and they don't occur for some time. If you could refer to your page here that outlines the dates for the budget meetings. So today is the 12th. We're taking the staff presented budget. The next one will be on the 19th of January. Then on February the 2nd, we have the council prepares budget to present to the public meeting. As we finish that meeting on the 2nd, that meeting, there should be a resolution at the end that'll activate a presentation of a budget that'll then be publicized on our website. So the public meeting can then have the good content of anything that this group between staff and council have put together. And then we'll activate that after the public meeting. There may be amendments and changes and recommendations coming from the public on the public meeting being the 9th. And then council will pass a budget sometime in May. That'll be a completed document. So there's a couple of resolutions that we need to acknowledge that are actual bylaws that'll be signed by the clerk and the mayor. And those are the things that actually activate the budget. This process over the next several meetings is a workshop. So let's all understand that the workshop budget is an evolving document. It will change a little bit with your input from members of council. It will change with input from the public when we get to our public meeting process. And let's hope that we can all come to a great resolution at the end. And I'll start off by saying that it will be a very difficult budget, in this municipality, as it is globally across the world. There's obviously huge pressures. Inflation has been affecting everything, and it's certainly affecting this municipality and the operations here as we continue to provide the public services that our municipality need and our citizens need. So I just wanted to put that on the floor before I even call for the agenda. Is there any questions of my comments in regards to this being a workshop session? Looking to the staff, Mr. CAO, any questions? Thank you. All right, so we're good. Thank you, council. Then we'll call our agenda forward. And at this time, we'll call for the approval of the agenda. Recommendation be it resolved that council of the township hereby approve the agenda dated January 12, 2022 as presented on this special council meeting. I'll look for a mover and seconder. Councillor Janine, Councillor Walker, any questions? Seeing none, I'll call the resolution. All those in favor? That passes. Thank you. We have a disclosure, pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Again, for disclosures, I just want to again remind everybody this is a workshop, so you do not know for sure if you have a disclosure unless some member may bring up something that may bring something forward. So if you have a disclosure, bring it up at that time right away. If you know of one right now with the presented budget, please bring it forward. All right, we'll just we'll move ahead. We're seeing none. All right. So members of council, you've heard my opening comments. I just want to supplement that by also advising that this is not a localized problem as far as our global economic crisis that's going on. Certainly this community will be impacted. I can tell you that I believe our staff have done an excellent job of consulting and reconsulting and rechecking and double checking and looking at the future forecasts for our community. And we've now going to see what work they have prepared for us. And I look forward to that. Just to kick things off, John Ferguson, our CAO, is going to open with some comments. But before he does, I'm going to jump the gun on him and just say that our treasurer, Kelly McDonald, is here with us. Kelly, you've been working like crazy on this. I know our deputy treasurer has also been working on it. Ron, he's actually not in the room today. I think he might be sort of still running the place right now while everybody's in here. And I want to welcome Stuart Schilling, who is our new financial analyst. Stuart's joined our municipality just at the beginning of the year, right? I think, what, the 4th or something, he joined us. So second, even there. So there you go. We have a new financial analyst joining us. So welcome to the table. Mr. Ferguson, I'll pass the microphone over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Barb has circulated the agenda, and for the public's reference, I believe the agenda is posted on the webpage if they want to go there and get a copy. Basically, before we get into the presentations, I wanted to give a brief overview of where we are right now and sort of set a stage to build a little bit of an understanding of where we are. So our assessment growth is determined by approved occupancies or actual occupancies of a new home. This growth is then captured by the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, MPAC. This process is usually 2 years behind, in the sense that we get our assessments from MPAC based on data from 2 years ago. Our median property assessment today is $315,000. The assessments have been frozen since 2016. Therefore, new homes are the basis for our assessment growth at this time, albeit our growth figures from MPAC are down this year compared to last year. Kelly will speak to this more in detail in her presentation following my comments here. Property assessments grow in 2 ways, and many councillors may know this, and I'm basically saying this to the public for somebody that may not be aware. One way is property market values increase, and we've seen that, but they can also decrease, and we've seen that. The other way is new housing builds, as I just mentioned a few minutes ago. Our growth, though, down from the assessment in 2022 is still growth. Growth has still occurred. It's just not as high as it was last year. So perhaps the figures that come in a year later now will have even more growth, for example, in next year's forecasting assessments. The tax rate is one input that is calculated in what you pay for taxes. So the other is the assessment. So whatever the assessment is, you have to calculate that with the tax rate, and that's what you pay. So our property value assessment is low. So the tax rate attached to it, you'll consider that you typically, if somebody had a higher assessment in another community, their taxes that they pay would be higher. Okay. In this instance, the median assessment in Clearview Township is $315,000. So our suggested tax rate, we begin a starting point for this process of the budget review. And we're saying that the tax pressure right now, as we put forward for council to consider, is 5.91%. So if you take our assessment of $315,000 and you attach the 5.91% as the tax rate increase, that equates into $212 a year. So basically, that type of pressure on the taxes would be for a homeowner that has a property value of $315,000 would be roughly an additional $212 a year. Now, keep in mind, this is a starting point, and typically as the budget is worked through, the starting point usually improves. Simcoe County is proposing a 3.5% increase, and we have captured that amount in our 5.91. So for example, if the county's percentage ends up being less, then we reflect that in our percentage as well. And the county hasn't finalized their budget process. So we put these inputs so that we have a general idea of where we are. Staff will be providing further information to council and the public through today's presentation. And then one more presentation will occur, at which time council reviews and then makes suggestions or changes in the budget for us to bring back to them again. So this will also involve public input as we go through this process. But council really wants to get the ebb and flow of the budget. In addition, council has requested from previous years that we add certain items to be considered. They're not approved yet, but to be considered in the budget this year. As staff goes through the budget, but as staff goes through these budget items, it'll become more apparent to council which ones were put on the budget this year. And finally, several neighboring municipalities have approved a capital levy. It's a tax, in addition to an approved tax rate. So sometimes we're compared to other municipalities and they look at the tax rate and they look at our tax rate. Those municipalities have another tax levy. It's a capital levy, and it's not captured in the tax rate. In our circumstance, we have a tax rate. We don't have a capital levy. We don't have that additional tax. So sometimes when they're comparing municipalities, it's not fully understood the different tax recipes that a municipality may be using. So just to give you another example, a municipality has residential taxes that they put a tax rate on. There's industrial, there's commercial, there's farmland, etc. There's even area rates for specific areas that can occur, and just certain communities would pay that. So each community is different. It's very hard to compare because of the different tax recipes that are used. And so I just wanted to give council an idea of the complexity of the budget, but also the simplicity of the budget. And when it comes right down to it, it's what we do that we feel that we can afford to meet the services of the community. And that's really the goal of what we want to do. So when staff work with finance and they get their budgets together, they're frugal. They want to make sure they're capturing everything that needs to be captured with all the potential growth that we're going to have. And I just want to commend staff and Kelly and her department for the work that they do to put this together, because a lot of work goes into this. And again, it's a starting point. So I don't want anybody to overreact to say this is where we are right now. This is simply a starting point. So with that said, I'll hand it back over to you, Your Worship, and thank you.
Thank you very much, CIO Ferguson. Very good analysis, and I appreciate your comment in regards to our municipality being compared to other municipalities when it comes to tax rate. You know, the impact system does set up that each municipality has a tax rate, and each municipality's properties, individual properties, private properties are assessed differently. So we must recognize across Ontario that all properties are unique and they sit within their own municipalities. So this is where we are. We're not to be compared with our other municipalities. We need to look at what services can and cannot be done here. All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Ferguson, and council. I hope that you're ready, because we're going to hear a whole bunch of information now, and we're going to go through this with our lead treasurer, the treasurer of the Township of Clearview, Kelly McDonald. She's at the podium, and I see we've got a camera on her and everything. So it's great to see you there, Kelly. Looking good. Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. Between your opening remarks and John's opening remarks, I can kind of just sit down. Good job, guys. So welcome to 2023's budget presentation. As has been mentioned, staff have done their best to bring in a budget at the lowest possible increase that we could, while still maintaining service levels and still hitting our legislatory requirements. Unfortunately, this year, it's not been an easy task. You're going to see presentations over this week and next week from all of the staff and each department. Please feel free to ask any questions of that department of their budget. Ideally, if you've got any projects in that you want to see, not firm estimates, but reasonably close estimates on for your council proposed budget meeting, please feel free to ask staff. It may take us some time to get actuals or close to actuals for you, but we're more than happy to do that. And
on with the show. Next slide, please, Sarah. So for council that was here for the 2022 budget presentation, I showed this slide to show you what kind of pressures we were facing in 2022. And at that time, we thought they were pretty severe pressures. We had CPI 2.95, which really isn't that bad. The problem is CPI is your grocery cart. And to be honest, with most municipal projects, it's not the grocery cart, it's the transport truck bringing the grocery cart or the roads that have to be maintained in order for that grocery cart to get to the store. That index was at 11.6 for 2022. And we thought, that's it. We'll be going down from here. It can't go up. Next slide, please. We thought wrong. So for 2023's budget pressure, we're now looking at a CPI of 6.9%, which has been unheard of for quite some time. Our non-residential building price index is at 15.6%. So any of our roads constructions, any of our water and sewer, any of our infrastructure or our construction projects or our gravel or our sand, that 15.6 is what's hitting them. Next. And John touched on this slide, and I know you've seen it before, but this is just to show you the difference between assessment, and we will very likely go through a reassessment over the next 4 years. You will see it and you will get questioned. In all honesty, the assessment will not change your property taxes. They stay the same unless for some reason your property went up higher compared to your neighbors. For the most part, it's the same tax dollar. It's just spread out differently. Where new tax dollars come in, so the tax rate stays the same, but we now have an additional $300,000. That's in growth. So it was once vacant land. There now is a house there that we're assessing as new money, new tax dollars. Next slide, please. So this is where we're starting. This is the operating budget of the entire township for 2022 and 2023. And then below it, you'll see what each department is increasing dollar-wise. Next slide. Same for capital, 2022 capital budget versus the 2023 capital budget, and where each increase is being witnessed. And then, of course, the blended. This is both capital and operating. These are the increases per department. So in total, there's $2 million and $38,000 increase. Our growth this year is at $320,799. That is an actual. In prior years, we've only been able to do an estimate, but we managed to get the actuals in for 2023. Just to give you an example, in 2022, our growth was almost $500,500. So we've had a drop in about $180,000 worth of growth. It will get picked up as quickly as possible. And with any luck, next year's growth numbers look a little bit nicer. But as John said, it is growth. So that $320,000 comes directly off the money that we need, or additional money that we need. So as of today, this is where our budget falls. We are at a net blended rate of 5.91. And as was mentioned, that can only come down as a best case scenario. I don't foresee it going up. There are no additional requests from staff over and above what you're being presented today. What that means to a homeowner is for every $100,000 of assessed value, you will pay $67.32 in additional property taxes compared to your 2022 tax bill. And as John said, with a median home of $315,000, you're looking about a $212 per year increase. I'll get into a lot more detail when we do the recap meeting. At the end of next week's presentation, you'll have the final presentation will be admin and IT, and that's where I will recruit the majority of the council directed or previous council directed increases to the budget. You'll also have an overview of all of the presentations. Here's where we are. At that time, you may have further questions on, could staff get us estimates on this, this, and this, and that's fantastic. Going into the February 2nd meeting, if there are any changes, again, that you think we could really do with a good estimate, please let us know as quickly as possible. And that's what I have for you.
Well, there you go, Kelly. Thank you very much. I as everyone said, thank you for all your work, your team who have been reviewing this. It is certainly going to be a challenge for us to face this 5.91% total blended tax increase that you're speaking of, but we're going to do our best in the next little while to try to see what we can either shave out of it or amend and even add to the budget. So we'll see what comes out of it. All right, we'll be moving on in the presentations, unless there's any opening questions from any members. Again, through the workshop process? No? Okay, Kelly.
Jennifer, you have the floor.
Here we go.
Presented up there, so if you have any comments or anything, you can see.
And Sarah's gonna. With her.
Yes, Councillor Beelan.
You want us to save questions to the end or ask them?
You can ask a question anytime. That's the beauty of it being a workshop. Perfect. Okay. Do you have a question? Oh, okay then. Okay. No. Our treasurer will be available during this entire process for sure. All right. Let's welcome Jennifer from our library, our CEO. Nice to see you.
Your worship and members of council, thank you for letting me present the Clearview Public Library Board's budget to you for 2023. To start us out on a good, can you switch? What do you want? Hand signals or flap my wings? Okay. I want to start us out on a positive note. So 2022 was a great year for us. We won 2 additional awards for our new Steiner branch. We had won one in 2021, but we got 2 Association of Architects awards in 2022. And Sarah, do your magic. We had our grand opening in May of 2022. We had, from the time of initial closure due to the pandemic, only had virtual programming. And May 14th at our grand opening was our first in-person event. And it was, you can see that people were coming from other galaxies to attend. So very, very positive. And now if we could look at the next screen, we'll talk a little bit about the operating and capital budgets. And you'll get from my presentation that I'm more talky than I am numbers, but I know that Kelly has provided you with the numbers. Most of our budget for the libraries in Clearview, and this is true across the province, comes from the municipality. But we do every year get a provincial operating and pay equity grant in the amount of $25,803. And that has been consistent since, I believe, 1994, when the provincial government cut that grant by 40%, and it has never gone up since. So, you know, we like money. 25,803 is important, but certainly it's not the majority of our funding as it had been many years ago. What we are looking at in terms of increases for our operating and capital budgets for 2023, first, we're looking at a $600 increase to our facility rental. We currently provide the New Lowell New Lowell United Church with $400 a year. And for that, we are allowed to use their lower part of their community space for programming, because our New Lowell branch doesn't have programming space in it. But what we are asking is for an additional $600 so we can utilize some of your community halls for teen programming. One of the buzzwords we're using for 2023 is equity. And we realize that for teens, some of our programs are not accessible because they don't live in the urban nodes that have branches. So we would like to go out to the communities that have them. We have discussed with the hall boards about financial implications. They are happy for us to use their parking lots in the good weather, and we're happy to do that. But there are some costs they would have to turn over to us if we were to go inside in the inclement weather. I'm going to bleat on about the dissolution of the Simcoe County Library Cooperative throughout this presentation because it's a momentous change for libraries in the county. It doesn't mean we can't manage the change. I'm sure we can, but there are some financial implications. One of them is coming from the county IT department. Now, unlike the rest of the municipality, all our IT provision, it comes, except for email, comes directly from the county IT. They have staff who are specially trained in dealing with our integrated library software and other softwares that are unique to libraries. And so we get excellent service from them. We are a priority because they have staff for that. But they are asking all the libraries to upgrade their computers so that they can bring in Microsoft 365 and some other softwares so they can remotely manage our computers rather than having to come out to each individual branch. So we're looking at a $5,000 increase for that. It's not momentous, but you should be aware of that. We opened the Stayner branch to the public in 2020. And we still haven't put up signage. So one of the things the board has obviously been dealing with, how do we deal with closures and other aspects of the pandemic? But something that the board last year decided on was it is time to finalize the signage in the building, both in terms of a dedication sign, which, you know, we usually have in every major building in the township, and we do have at the other two branches, and also donation signage. We've brought in over $200,000 in donation, and it's only right that the donors be recognized. So in the fall of 2022, we did go out and ask for estimates for what this signage would cost, and we were given a figure, and we've added in about 3% for inflation. So we are asking for $11,000 in 2023 to move forward on that. Now, Councillor Walker, I know you will know this, that if you don't maintain your branches, you end up looking at really big numbers down the line. We had this with the old Stayner branch at one point, and we don't want to see that happen again. So we have put into the 2023 budget $8,000 for those two branches. That's one figure, not $8,000 for each branch. So that's an addition as well. But to end on a positive note, the new Lowell branch building debenture ends this year, and Kelly has disappeared. Okay, so, oh, you're back there. You're hiding. All right, I can see you now. Do you know what month that ends? I didn't have that at my fingertips. Just make one. January.
I would, Jennifer, but you have my laptop.
Okay. Well, at some point that ends, which means that branch we will no longer owe any money on, and then we will just have one branch that we're moving forward on that. Can I have the next slide, please? As I said, I would bleat on about this, so I'll go forward. We now have a Simcoe County digital library service, and that is what the county has changed from having a library that served member libraries in the county to providing many of those services through a digital library service. And I must say that the staff at the county have been really good to work with. I mean, we have some concerns about the collection, but they've been very forthright in what they can do and what they can, and trying to make everything as easy as possible for us. The integrated library software, which is what we all rely on to check books out, to hold our records for every item that we have in our various collections. And there's 11 libraries across the county that feed into the county's integrated library software, as well as all our patron records are on there. We'd be going back to the 19th century if we didn't have this. And you know, it might be nice to watch on TV documentaries about the 19th century, but you don't want to live it. So the county's continuing to pay for that. Almost all of the databases that we have available to the public through our website are paid for and will continue to be paid for by the county. The physical collection that the county had is being distributed to the member libraries. So currently in the Stayner branch, we have 126 boxes of materials, and I have no space in the library for them. But before you think that, oh, they're just books, there are large print books in there, but most of these things are things like Blu-ray DVDs, talking books. I know at the orientation meeting, some of you had launch pads and book packs where there's an actual well, not a cassette, that shows how old I am, but there's a mechanism for hearing the book for kids as well as reading through. And many parents find that really helpful in terms of building their vocabulary and helping them learn how to pronounce words that maybe they haven't come into contact with before. So that's what the bulk of that 126 box inventory in our branches are. And so that's an issue for us. And earlier, before the meeting started, we were discussing the issue of storage throughout the departments as being an issue. And it certainly is for us. And maybe that's something that we as a department with the other departments can work on to resolve. It's always better to do things globally than individually. Can we go to the numbers? What's new and what are we doing different that you should be aware of? We've had a massive increase in the usage of our newspapers and e-magazines. In the past, we used a software called Flipster, and we were getting, tops 40 or 50 articles looked at a month by users. We now have access to about 7,500 magazines and newspapers from around the world. And we're getting over 7,000 articles accessed monthly, most of that remotely. So a lot of people are using these resources remotely rather than coming in. Again, I've talked about the Simcoe County Library Cooperative and its dissolution. And this is a real adjustment for us because it's been around for 70 years. And despite appearances, I have not been around for 70 years, but I have been around for almost half of that period of time. So it is a real, change of mindset to come to grips with how this is going to affect us. In 2022, our library board decided that in the fall of 2023, we would review operating hours at all three branches. Now, we waited that long. They wanted to do it before that. Because of the pandemic, we've had a very different traffic flow coming in, and we wanted more normal time figures to be able to present to the board so they can make an appropriate decision. If the board decides to change hours and there are no financial implications, I am pretty sure that they will do that in late 2023. But if they want to do something, which I would love to see, is the Stayner branch open on Mondays, that's a financial implication, and we would have to wait until we received your approval for the 2024 budget year. We've also been working closely with other departments to develop a memorandum of understanding because, we know that we now share the Recreation and Culture and Parks building in Stayner with the community center and with the arena. We're all there together, but we share many other services with the other departments, including Public Works and Finance and Human Resources. And we felt that this needed to be in a permanent document, not that the document can't be changed or adjusted over time as needed, but as the players walk out the door, if the knowledge is only in their heads, you've lost a lot of information. So the board has approved the MOU, which has gone through senior management team and been approved by them. And we're now waiting on your CAO to bring it to you for your review and hopefully your approval. And that's it. Happy to take questions. I know you have the numbers there from Kelly. I've also got the numbers here if you have questions that are specific.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jennifer. I've made a few notes, so I'm looking. I see the deputy mayor. Is anybody else with any questions for Jennifer? Or okay, we've got several. Paul, you're up first. Turn on your mic there first. Thank you.
Jennifer, can you explain when you start talking about storage issues and then you explain what's in it? Is this going to increase as we see more online books and stuff like that? Are we going to be pulling books and stuff out of the library? Are we talking outdated inventory? Are we keeping this forever? What's
part of being a good librarian is weeding your collection and knowing how to deselect material. That goes on throughout the year. It's an ongoing process, and we take material off regularly based on the condition, based on is the information outdated, based on is nobody looking at it anymore. So there's a number of criteria that staff use. So no, if stuff's really outdated, it is not on the shelves. And I should point out that our new branch is wonderful. It's really accessible, but because it's so much more accessible, we had to weed out 25% of the collection in the old Stainer branch to be able to get it to fit in there now. So there's very little room for growth. And people think that, oh, you know, we have all these e-resources now, we don't need books. People love books. Bracebridge Public Library did a study of teens and how they felt about books. And if they wanted to go to more e-resources or e-books and e-audio books. And they said, you know, we're on computers and our phones all day. When we're doing our reading for enjoyment, we want a book. And I don't think that's exclusive to the Bracebridge area. There's still a real love for books, but more and more of the things we find on our shelves are not necessarily printed material. And the new formats that come out, and they're coming out all the time, are in demand by people, and we have to put them on the shelves. So we still need shelving. So I don't think, even though we're moving towards getting more and more things in terms of e-resources and databases, if you want to use ancestry.com, for example, come on in. You can't use it from home for free, but you can use it in the library for free. You don't even need a membership. So I don't think the one is going to see the other retire. It's going to be an increased desire for both.
So that, like, getting back to my original, my concern is when I hear you having to store inventory.
Well, the 126 boxes, I don't have shelf space to just put them out in the 3 branches. You know, we weren't designed to before the things came to us in a rotation. So much smaller number of boxes would come to each branch, and we would send back what we had and it would go to another library system. So there was a constant flow. And it was weeded and updated on a regular basis. But this is one of the things that we're struggling with the dissolution of the county cooperative, is that they're not going to maintain this. They're giving us the collection that currently exists, and we have to find some way to put it on the shelves and maintain it and not just leave it there and let it get outdated and useless.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mr. Beelan, I saw you first and then Mr. Walker. Anybody else? Go ahead, Councillor Beelan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a couple questions. What do we get for this Creemore Branch Edition? I don't fully understand that. What do we, is that for storage or?
No, I didn't even touch on that. But did I skip a screen? I'm so old and silly. So in the development charges study, we have put in for an addition in Creemore in 2025. Now, whether that goes ahead in 2025 or for financial reasons gets pushed back, it was really looking at the growth in Creemore, because usually we in the library world, we figure out how many square feet you need in a library building based on the population. And if we have a big boom in Creemore, which I know we had intended to have a big boom, and it's happening, we do see the houses come up, we recognize that we're going to need more space to be able to serve that larger population.
And my second question, I know it's only a little charge, but the maintenance for Creemore New Lowell, the 8,000, that's an increase, or are we not doing maintenance now? Or?
Well, we do have maintenance, but when we create the maintenance budget, it initially is things like, you know, well, it's not the cleaning. What is in the maintenance budget? It's traditional things that are ongoing. Like we have, all the buildings are alarmed. So the alarm cost per year plus whatever increase we anticipate is built into that. But when I look at any additions, that's because specific work needs to be done. We had a leak in 2022 in our New Lowell branch, for example. That's been repaired, but there's been some water damage on the inside. So we need some drywalling and painting and that sort of thing. And so there's little things like that throughout the branches. In Creemore, we have a major window that's got a major crack in it. We need to replace the window. These things we don't, at least the library doesn't typically put in as a base cost every year, because you're not, you know, that's an additional maintenance feature.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good questions. Thank you, Councillor Beelan. Mr. Walker, Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to make a comment, a couple comments. First of all, we are into more e-magazines and newspapers. You go and try and find a newspaper out there today or magazines today, and most stores are not carrying them anymore because of costs. Most people can't afford to buy them, so therefore they're utilizing, where can they go? They go to the libraries to find out and utilize that type of service. Maintenance, Marty, is just the fact that when the repairs need to be made in these older buildings as they get older, we sometimes have to do some cosmetics. And so to add a little more each year in your maintenance budget, as buildings get older, they cost us more. So that's part and parcel of that kind of maintenance costs. The other thing, Jennifer, is the signage you said was all internal signage.
Yes.
For the ends of for the shelves, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, I know where you're going with this one.
Have you thought of and contact and work with Parks and Rec to do external signage at the end of the entranceway into our complex? To me, we need to be looking at that type of expenditure, a joint venture, electronics, so that can be programmed with programs for both facilities. We have a great facility up there now, and we need to upgrade our signage. So I think that should be looked at in budget, in conversation with rec department. And I know, unfortunately, those things are likely about 100,000 plus. So we need to certainly look at that or some aside this year in reserve or next year, but that's an avenue that we need to complete that project up there at the facility to make it a great looking facility. It is now, but that would just add to it. Thank you.
And Councillor Walker, through your worship, Terry and I have had preliminary discussions on this, and neither one of us have put it in 2023, but we're very well aware that it needs to be addressed at some point.
Good point, Councillor Walker. Thank you. I was kind of counting on you to bring that point up because I know we've talked about it before. So thank you for bringing that up. And Terry, we'll talk to you about it when we get to your meeting. Mr. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Through your worship, Jennifer, and also to our accountant. Under your Clearview Public Library, you have the line item materials. Is that a total of what you've just presented? Or is
No.
that a different for capital? I'm not talking
Okay, so
about.
we speak a different language.
Okay.
So for a librarian, materials means whatever e-resources we're providing to the public or physical materials we're putting on the shelves. So it's collection materials. I know it comes to you as materials, but we would refer to it as collection materials. The overall budget is much bigger than that.
Okay, but I'm just asking from an increased point of view, is that considered an operating or is it considered a capital budget then?
Through your worship to the deputy mayor, it's actually a capital item, but I don't believe there's much of an increase for 2023. But starting with PSAB 3150, anything over $20,000 in value in total. So one book may only be worth $30. In total, we have over $20,000 and then some per branch. So that is considered a capital asset.
Excellent. Good point. Any other members of council with any questions? All right. I have one that also relates to the recreation department as well as the library. Given that we have this now, well-established hub of activity, at the Stayner Recreation Center, as well as the Stayner Branch Clearview Public Library combined together and working. And we've honestly, I believe we've worked out some of the bugs and operational procedures about how we share the space of the community center hall, et cetera. But you brought it up in your budget. It's a small amount. You're asking for some additional money to do youth programming services out in our community at our community service halls. And so my question is, and I'm sure the public have too, what services are being provided that are uniquely library services rather than those that are being provided by the youth center? Because in another meeting, this council is going to hear about the youth center. So I'm wondering what your interpretation of that is, why we have youth service programs running from the library and we have youth service programs running from the youth center. Jennifer.
Your worship, first, let me just set the stage that we had youth programs before there was a youth center. But our programming, it is very much literacy based and very much STEAM, especially when we deal with the younger kids. So if you're used to that term from dealing with school curriculum, you'll see that it very much flows into that. So we try not to overstep and go into whatever the youth center is doing, although we do our youth librarian actually goes to the youth center once a month and does presentations there and takes some of our collection there. And we do have kids borrowing stuff. The interesting thing we found so far is that most of the kids who go to the youth center don't go to the branches. It's a different, probably because you do different programs. But it allows us to let them know about us and allows them to use us without having to come over.
Okay, I think we can have a fulsome discussion about this a little later, but I appreciate the one item in what you said, and that is that if the library focuses on literacy issues and youth education issues as related to literacy and using those instruments that we've now known for generations called books, then I think then I can support it. I think that it's interesting to note that I've had residents speak to me over the last couple of years about how the similarities, particularly as we went through COVID, there were very similar sort of packages that were being sent home from each group that were frankly kind of similar. And so, you know, I just want looking to make sure that we continue to provide the best level of service we can for our youth in both of these very important categories. So
Okay.
I'm sure that it's a small amount, but I just want to clarify that at this point in this council discussion. Okay.
Yes.
Anybody else with any questions? All right. Thank you very much, Jennifer LaChapelle, for joining us. I'm sure if council has other discussion items about this, you'll be available to answer any questions before we get to any final resolutions.
Absolutely.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Kelly, you have to get up and introduce, or you just want to, she's going to walk up to the mic. Okay, go ahead, Kelly. Our treasurer.
Thank you, Jennifer. So our next presenter is going to be Public Works, Water, Sewer, and Roads. We're going to start off with the big honcho, Mike Ron, our Director of Public Works.
Numero
Hi.
uno.
Hi. I'm just going to pull it up some great notes as well.
So how am I looking up there? Okay, lovely. Little different process here. Can I switch this up here? Are we good?
Yeah, I think we're just about ready to go. I think our clerk is going to put the camera on you, and there you go, Mike. All right, Mike Ron, our Director of Public Works. Nice to see you, Mike.
Thank you, Your Worship, and council and staff that are here, and anybody who has nothing else to do and is watching from home. How are you? So Public Works budget, just going to go through a few things here. So I'm only going to be talking briefly about the overall operation of the department and some of the development work that we oversee. So we obviously have the Director of Planning and Development looks after all of the paperwork to get that process moving and making sure what they build is fits into our township. But below the ground is all the water and the sewer and the storm work, and all that stuff has to tie into our systems, and the Public Works Department oversees that. So this, I'll be honest, I never reinvent the wheel. I stole this from some other municipality, thought it looked good, and I tweaked it to suit Clearview Township. Can you put these on? Are they on the? Okay.
Yeah, do you have them there?
I'm like,
Sarah?
what am I talking about here?
There you go.
I'll back up. I thought it was coming from my computer. There we go. So we're gonna go through. That's the agenda. Yeah, stop right there for a second. If council can read that, there's a little window in the way, but that's okay. So in general, the department is well suited to look after, right, the roads, transportation, drainage, bridges, water, wastewater. We also have a small transit system that we look after, and Todd and Dan will be looking at those or presenting those presentations after I'm done here. I don't like the fact I'm not controlling the screen show. I think that doesn't help my OCD any.
Now, Mike, it's a team effort here. Okay, so I know you're you like to operate on your own, but that's okay.
I
We're going to
do.
work together here.
Runs back to my time in training.
That's it.
So overall, we've got there's around $100 million in capital projects. That doesn't mean that we're spending that money from the township coffers. Again, Todd and Dan will talk about some of the specifics there. Most of the projects are funded through development charges or prepayments when we talk about the capital items. You're way ahead of me. Stop, back up. One more. No, up forwards. Yeah, that's good. Can't see the whole screen, but it's pretty close. So some of the projects that are going on in Stayner, this really isn't much different than last year. So on the screen here, when you see these streets in Stayner that are being built and the project values there, so the total project value there of $73 million, right off the top, the bottom line KPR water supply. We had expected that the development community was going to front end and prepay for this whole project. When the final estimate came in, we actually went to tender, and when the tenders came back, I guess due to increases in costs due to COVID in part, supply chain issues, the price of fuel, the price of energy, the price of concrete, those costs became out of reach for the development community. That project did not go forward. If Stayner is going to grow, we are going to have a water source. That is the most viable water source for Stayner. You're going to hear other people try to come up with ways that they can save money, but we've looked at everything. That's the long-term source right there, and we need to build it. And if and when we do, we'll be asking the developers to pay for that, either upfront or long-term. None of those costs come out of the existing ratepayers at this point, and definitely not out of tax dollars. We make the difference between the water and wastewater department and the rest of the public works responsibilities. All of the wastewater and water are paid through for rates. So if you get a water or sewer bill, you don't get a water or sewer bill if you don't have a water or sewer line. If you pay taxes, none of your tax dollars go towards water or wastewater projects, period. If it's for future use, the costs are brought back to the township through development charges. So if we have to spend $50 million to supply water to 4,000 homes, the development charge for water is $50 million divided by 4,000. And when they pay their development charge at the front counter, there's no profit. There's no hidden agendas or monies. It's a direct cost for the service. So are these projects listed on here? So Sunnydale Street, Mowat intersection. The Mowat intersection, Dan's going to talk about that in more detail. Mowat Street North, that's also a developer project. We have to assist with that design because they're on existing road allowances. Margaret Street, excluding sanitary, so that is also a developer, has to build that project. We have to be involved, and they're going to be making improvements to our intersection. Last year, the only other one on here you would see would have been Locke Avenue. It's not on here because the municipality ran that project. Guess which project got completed? Phillip Street on here. So Phillip Street is 30% paid for by the developer. Township initiated and operated project. That project will be initiated. The tender's been awarded. That project starts in April. Next slide. I'm getting used to this. This is just a picture of where the different projects are, the developments in Stayner. So can you just put your cursor right here on the screen? So that's the Sunnydale Street project there, and just to the left of it, Phillip Street. That's the project that's starting in April. The tender's been awarded. And if you just look around, so this is literally a picture right off of our website. If council wanted to go on and look at the developments in Stayner, this is where that came from. So Estates of Clearview, Clearview Park, Cityscape, Emerald Creek, just the ones that are listed. The ones that are in yellow don't have any water allocation. Oh, sorry, Ashley Meadows 1 does. But in order to build all these subdivisions, we need water supply. Until that project goes forwards, there's no additional water supply for Stainer. All the existing water capacity and now it's been accounted for. Like we have enough water to provide Ashton Meadows Phase 1, Estates of Clearview Phase 2, up in the brown, Manor Town Homes just below that. Yeah, they've paid for their water and they've basically bought up the remaining allocation. We're going to do a risk assessment on the water supply capacity available. We've done it last year. Now that we've got to a year end, that'll be done again with Todd's crew and the compliance officer, Stephanie. And we'll bring that back to council so they're aware. We've got a policy in place that the planning department also has for how we handle things. So new site plans, no water allocation. New subdivisions, no water allocation. That'll go through the planning department, then it'll go through Public Works Department. And then council had to delegate authority to the CAO to approve those. It won't get there unless there's water allocation. We can't put the systems at risk. To see a question.
Yeah, Mike, the previous slide, you have like Sunnydale Street, 52% was upfronted by the developer. Where's the other 48% come from?
Yeah, so Sunnydale Street, there was a number of reports came to council. So part of the project is development charges. This is going to get complicated. If you want to hear it, I can give it. It's okay.
Right ahead.
Sure. So the water and the wastewater, there's multiple revenue streams. So because there's a water main on the street and we're upsizing it, portion of the upsizing goes to development charges because it's for new development, but the existing replacement value goes into our rates. So the water and sewer rate study, it accounts for water mains going out 100 years. So part of it comes through our rates, part of it comes through development charges. The 52% is prepaid. So they've paid their development charges up front. And not only that, Manortown actually paid, in addition to development charges, they paid for some of the existing residents' wastewater so that it was an easier burden, not a big a burden for them to handle. And on the wastewater side, there's no wastewater there. So we're actually charging all the existing residents their fair share to connect to the system. The developers are paying to connect to the system. Phillips Street, different sewer main, existing one there, we're upsizing it. Part of it's through development charges, but because we're upsizing an existing main, a portion of that revenue comes from the water and sewer rates. So, and then the road, the asphalt is a development charge project because we have to increase the road capacity for development. So the road portion of Sunnydale Street is also partially DC paid. There's some very detailed reports in last year's council agenda folders.
For Councillor Beelan, if you'd like to see that report, I'm sure our clerk's department could find it and make it available. For any member, actually.
Good. A lot of these projects are very similar. It's whoever benefits from the service pays for the service. We're not putting anything anywhere where it doesn't belong and not charging anybody something they shouldn't be charged. It's truly transparent. What do we got? So for Creemore, so I talked about Stainer. Creemore, this time last year, there was a slide on here that said, here's $30 million worth of work. We don't know who's going to pay for it. So since then, we've initiated a master servicing plan for water and wastewater in Creemore. Again, all in previous council reports. The development communities banded together and they've agreed to pay for that study. So $352,000 study. We're talking about it today, and there's about 20 different avenues on this study alone. So simulative capacity study for the Mad River. We have to do upgrades to the plant. We're looking at where pump stations would go, how big the reservoir's got to be. It's a huge undertaking. Every project on here, the development community has agreed to finance the design for in 2023, or at least initiate that design. So they agreed to in 2022 to pay for the master servicing plan. Now they've come to us, and John's leading that discussion with the developer group. They have agreed to pay for the design of most of these pieces of infrastructure. The treatment plant upgrade that's a long-term solution. So that's not going to be designed until the master servicing plan dictates what we have to do and how we have to do it. So in short, the master servicing plan is going to interact with the community, interact with the developers, determine what we need, how much property we have to service. How do we do that? How much it's going to cost? Takes all of those, like that's an environmental assessment, takes all of those variables and kind of provides counsel. Here's the solution. So that study is expensive, but it does eliminate the need for multiple EAs, and one EA is about $200,000 usually. So just a list of these projects, fairly straightforward. Everything you need to service a subdivision is on this list. You can't build a subdivision without water and sewer. And, you know, when the auditors are going to tell you your water and sewer reserves are negative, well, there's a reason for that. We need that water and sewer to be in place before we can move forward. The location of some of these places in the next slide. So Alliance Heritage, if you come in the Mary Street in Creemore, that's from Cashtown into Creemore, you turn left to see those new houses on the left-hand side. That's right where Sarah's cursor is. Well, it was right on the left side. Yeah. So that's phase one. In order for them to proceed to phase two, they're going to have to build all this, a lot of infrastructure, and we're working through a number of things. One of the things that was on that previous slide was a pre-treatment system that would maybe, right, we've got that large industrial user in town with strong wastewater that pays a lot of money to have their sewage treated. It might be easier on the plant if we pre-treated that sewage. So there, one of the developers, engineers, has come up with a draft design. We're reviewing that and providing comments back. But that is another process that we're following through. So these developments, so the MDM development, that's underway. That's a condo development. That is on an existing water, that's on a road that has water and sewer under it. They don't need to do anything else. Like they can build this summer, other than they need to upsize the water main in front of their house to account for fire flows or in front of their buildings. The Alliance Heritage is going to have a lot of infrastructure. The two gray ones below 101 and 111 George, owned by Zhang's. And then across the street, there's a couple of properties, not draft plan approved, but are interested in, they're in the settlement area. So those developers are also included with funding this infrastructure. Any questions about this in Creemore? No, okay. So we took all, if you look at the development charge background study, it lists everything we need to build infrastructure in our settlement areas of Creemore and Stayner. It doesn't include Nottawa. There's been an environmental assessment done for Nottawa, but there are also developers interested in potentially building in Nottawa. They're looking at water source right now, Georgian communities. So we're working with those two. This slide, in December, council directed the CIO to look at a business model to support the delivery of a municipal services corporation. So the estimate to do this is approximately $50,000. We'll get we'll lock down an estimate before we proceed. And with all things that help with new development, we'll ask the developers to pay for it, or it will be included in future charges. What this will do, you know, well, on the note there, it'll provide some debt flexibility so that if we want to fund water and wastewater infrastructure without affecting the debt capacity of the township or the needs of other departments. So right now, if we wanted to build $50 million worth of waterworks in Stayner, we would exceed the municipal debt capacity. We would be breaking the law under the Municipal Act. We're not allowed to do that. We could ask for the debt capacity to be increased, and we have a consultant looking into that. But this is, I'll stop short of calling it a loophole. Basically, it's a service company that utilizes municipal staff to build municipal infrastructure, to charge municipal residents for a municipal service. So they've done it in Innisfil, it's called In Services. They've done it in Oromodonte. it's a way to get around adding or taking away from the debt capacity of the municipality and allowing with a business plan, we could go forward. Strongly would recommend before pulling the trigger on this, if it does turn out to be something valid, that we would have a commitment from the development community for a large portion of the infrastructure costs. Because if you borrow $50 million, you have to pay interest on that $50 million. And the only place that interest payment comes from is the existing ratepayers. If you have skin in the game, if you own a subdivision and you want to build there and you invest millions of dollars, that may make you move forward a little bit faster. If we build $50 million worth of infrastructure, a developer could literally sit on the property for years and not do anything. So we need that commitment. Any questions until now? That's all I've got for what's going on in this part of the department. Dan and Todd are going to take over here.
All right, well, don't go away. I think the deputy mayor has a question for you, Mike.
Sure.
Mike, you were talking about our water supply here in Stayner and related to Creemore and any others. Do we have many properties that we have committed water services to that people are just sitting on and land banking? I'm not talking 1 year, I'm talking multiple years and multiple renewals.
I think the short answer is no. So we've only committed water to the final approved subdivisions. And so we've committed water to the 3 properties, developments I mentioned. They're proceeding, like they're in the middle of building stage. And they prepaid the water. So then by prepaying the water, basically they gave us $5 million to help us get all the studies, the wells built on Klondike Park Road, right? The environmental assessments, the approvals, the modeling of the aquifers. So there's 4 wells out there now, and we can pump 120 liters a second of water from that site. Now we need infrastructure to get it to town. So that's how they bought those units, because they were ready to go. Other developers were asked if they wanted in, and they said no. So if a developer comes to you and says, I have a subdivision on Simcoe Street and it's 25 lots, he had an opportunity to finance and pre-purchase water units, chose not to. So now it's a bit of a problem because we don't have extra units to hand out.
Good question. It's an ongoing negotiation. Thank you, Mike, for your work on this. And I know there's other members of the department that are going to come forward. I'm not sure. Is Dan's up next?
So now
Okay.
your worship and council. So Dan and Todd, like Dan is the roads expert, transportation expert in Clearview Township. Todd looks after all the day-to-day duties, everything that happens outside where you drive, and along with a lot of the sewer plant operations. So if you're wondering, these are the guys that are spending your operational money, and I'm not taking the heat.
Okay, thank you, Mike. I tell you. There's a good leader. He delegates that responsibility. I can see that. Thank you, Mike. All right. All right, Dan, you're just coming back. Okay. Dan will be taking over here in a second. Yeah, that's right. Use your own water. Control on that.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. I will apologize ahead of time, but I've been down and out recently with this nasty cold. So I will, if I break it into a fit,
You stay right over there.
I'll stay way over here. I'm sucking, I'm sucking on something.
All right,
Thank
get
you.
well, Dan, get well.
So as Mike indicated, I'm going to be discussing the operating capital budget for the roads, transportation, drainage, bridge bridge works for the township. We'll go to the next slide. I'll just jump straight in. And I'll be touching on basically the hard hitters, the main budget, increases that we're faced with this year. Mostly involving anything that is transported here. Anything that goes on a truck has been impacted over the last couple of years, and anticipate that that's going to be the same this year, 2023. So in 2020, 2020. So with 2019, when I started, some councilors remember, and the new ones may not, but 2019, when I started in May, it had just gone through a rough springtime with our gravel roads, and I had and Todd and I and our works department, we had put together a plan to hopefully improve that. And part of that was to introduce a 5-year rotating plan to improve our gravel roads while we resurface them. So improving them would be to excavate any organic material or any areas that were poor as they showed up in the springtime, excavate that poor material out, put in some fresh gravel, and then resurface that area. So in 2023, you'll see the locations in purple are the locations that are planned for gravel resurfacing in 2023. I do note that some of those roads were actually done in last year. Where some of them, some of the hills in Creamware. Last year, the year before, we did some extensive dig outs there just because it needed it. Next page. So gravel resurfacing budget allocation for 2023 is $664,100. A lot of money to spend on gravel. And again, a lot of that is trucking costs. Trucking fuel costs have gone through the roof, and trucking has increased that. Line painting, another program that I had introduced in 2021, I believe, was when we started that, to mark up our roads, put centerline markings on, and edge line markings on. We expanded that in 2022. And 2023, we're not proposing to expand that, but just to maintain what we have so far, see how everything goes that way. I think most of our north-south, east-west roads have paint on them now. But we can always improve that. Winter sand is another item. There you go. Winter sand is another. It's trucked. So we're looking at increases to that item. Excuse me. Mike talked on this. Again, another significant project that we have in 2023. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Is Sunnydale Street. Mike had indicated for full urbanization will be storm sewers, curb gutter, new asphalt, sidewalks along the whole stretch. Next slide. Phase 2 of the 10th concession. Improvements is planned for 2023. Another project that with phenomenal increase into the the budgeted amount or estimated amount just from 2021 to 2022. Back in 2014, when this road was considered as part of the road settlement agreement that we're legally bound by, the estimate to do the entire road was about $3.5 million. And we've spent 3.5 million on phase one alone. So with some creative, this will be I would say, looking to Kelly, probably the reason for the highest increase in the capital budget for public works in 2023, using increase in budget there, plus some gas tax and other funding sources for this work. Really, the only roads capital project in 2023 is going to go to finishing this 10th concession. It's desperately needed. So much traffic on that road. Having half of it paved and half of it with gravel is a maintenance concern. But it's on the shelf, ready to tender. So we're hoping, if council does approve this fairly soon in February, March, that we can get some better pricing that we might not have received before. So for the next slide, another project that I had here, and I had intended to make a slide and I'm not sure why, but something that I had been thinking about and heard about from the public and from council in the past, and it's something that I had initiated in late 2022, was a pedestrian activated signal for North Street at Highway 26. Right, currently crossing is crossing guard with a conventional school crossing. And so with a pedestrian activated signal, it will have flashing lights, pedestrian crossing, and a pedestrian could hit a button, activate the signals, they could cross, and it's a bit more safe that way. We are working, there's a submission probably going to go to the MTO fairly soon on an approval for this. Their approval requirements is a lot less because we're in a connecting link with them. So, let's keep our fingers crossed. If council approves this, I think it's being funded by OCIF, I think is the grant for that. So it won't affect the taxation. And two other projects that were carried over from previous council were $50,000 each for improvements to the medical center parking lot in Creemore to add additional off-street or green P parking in Creemore. And one was to investigate further of the IGA parking lot behind the IGA in Creemore as well. So those two projects I didn't have on the list, but they're being looked at for 2023 as well.
Sorry to interrupt. I think you just said it was the IGA. I think it's Foodland.
Or sorry, Foodland.
Just for clarity. Thanks.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes, Foodland. Just go back one. Sure. Thanks. So I did this last year. Just wanted to make council aware of some of the projects that are kind of on the shelf, in process, that have been removed or been deferred to future years. Couple of significant road improvements that we've identified that should be done, need to get done, but they're getting pushed back into future budgets. Riverside Drive from County Road 9 to Glen Huron. Lots of riverbank erosion is causing havoc on a road, and we've done some repairs in the last few years. Again, another one we did in in the fall that was pretty significant that we just needed to do because it was really bad. Centerline Road, probably the busiest road in the municipality, that municipal owned. County Road 9 to concession 7, reconstruction through the hill up there. Being deferred to another year, but it's in the design process. Another project that's being deferred and really haven't pushed it any further, but Councillor Beelan may be aware of, but certainly Councillor Lamers was a part of it. Previous was the County Road 9, call it County Road 9 drainage issues, Clarendon Street and Elgin Street. There's still some drainage issues going on there, and we're still trying to discuss with the NBCA in order to get some water to go that way. So that project's being deferred as well. Okay, next slide. Capital Bridge projects for 2023. The last budget, we had explained how the Collingwood Street Bridge is probably a 2-year process. We're on track. It's being designed. Hopefully in 2023, we will be in the permit phase to get permits from the NBCA and the NEC in order to have this in place to start construction in 2024. Another project that I'll have to bring to council for some direction, hopefully at the end of the month, is the Second Street, Second Concession Bridge over the Mad River down in Brentwood. As council may remember, and the new ones, we closed that bridge in 2020, May of 2021, I believe. We closed it to any access. It's just not in a good condition that anybody can travel over that. So we've had our engineers investigating, consulting with MVCA on what could be put in place there to allow some sort of access across it. So they've come up with, I think, three scenarios that I'll bring a report to council before the budget's passed. It shouldn't affect the taxation portion of the budget because it would come out of that bridge reserve potentially. Next slide. Our capital equipment replacement needs. This is another one that it's mind-boggling. Contacting truck suppliers, dump truck suppliers, they can't make a commitment. They won't make a commitment for 3-4 years. You can't get a dump truck, a plow truck. It's very frustrating. We need, we do have the need to do this and get these pieces of equipment replaced because they're used constantly. So we're coming up with potentially some new and innovative ways to get these looked at. And one of them is LAS program, the Canoe. It used to be called Sourcewell. It's called Canoe now. We've done that with a backhoe and a generator. So we're looking at doing that with these trucks. So another one that I'll probably bring to council in not too long. Next, that might be it. That's it for me. I didn't know if you wanted to save comments or you want to comments now.
No. We will not let you go away just yet. I know you're coughing and hacking, but we'll give you a second to take your breath. There's some members of council here that I'm sure have some questions. So
Do as bad as I thought I would.
all right, hang in there, Dan. We're still supporting it. Members of council, I see Walker first, then Paul. Did you have something? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Your Worship. Dan, you talked about the pedestrian crossing at North End 26. That will still be a school crossing guard as well during the school hours. And then that will be a pedestrian activated crossing during off times. Is that how that we plan to operate that process?
I would believe so. Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Walker. I would anticipate that would still need to be there. This would just add a bit more flash and awareness to the motorists that something's going on here. So it's essentially just some flashing beacons there on either side of the road and still activated as a crossing. So
Yeah, that's what I would see too, because I think the crossing guard is certainly needed on that stretch of road all the time, no matter what else we can put there to help facilitate some safety aspects. The other thing is you talked about heavy equipment. Like time frame wise, you're looking at what, 2 years or 3 if you to order some of this stuff, or they're not even giving you that anymore?
yeah, through your worship to Councillor Walker. Through the LAS, I've just had some discussions before Christmas and again here in the new year about the LAS program, the Sourcewell canoe purchasing through AMO. That if I get those numbers to council, within the next few weeks, I'm hoping to get it to the next council meeting. These would be 2022 vehicles, let's say. So the vehicles that I had, the council had approved in 2022, might be able to get them in 2024. So that list of 2023 vehicles, we start that process again, right? And so that process again, so 2023 vehicles, maybe 2025 vehicles. So it's really tough. And to be honest with council, I've only got one respondent from one manufacturer that will even tell me that they can get a vehicle. So it's really tough, really tough. We're a little speck of sand compared to the MTOs and the City of Toronto's and the Ottawas and all that, right? They're all bidding for the same piece of equipment. We're still paying the same that City of Toronto would, but we got this much money to work with. So
We're gonna have to talk to our friends in the city of Ottawa and borrow one of their trucks. Paul, you had a question?
Thank you, Your Worship. Dan, I don't want to throw you under the bus or anything, but I was at, Doug and I were at county council this week, and I see in their budget, they've proposed replacing the bridge in Glen Huron this year. I don't know if you're aware of that or not.
which
The county of Simcoe is budgeting to replace the bridge in Glen Huron. County Road 8, or our 8th line, used to be a county road, so there's still some commitment as far as maintaining bridges. So they have, Doug, I don't know if you remember
Yeah.
Your Worship,
They did, in fact, they did some engineering research on it last year, and I believe our team did some work on it as well. A little paving patch up, and discovered some problems with the bridge as well. So that little bridge right in Glen Huron is slated for work from the county of Simcoe this year, which
we
I
saw
was
that.
surprised too. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, it's in our
well,
preliminary
I
budget.
knew they were doing the investigation. I think they did some boreholes or some
Yeah.
concrete sampling of it last
Yeah.
year. They get some road occupancy, but I knew there was some work being done. I wasn't aware that was going to be done.
It's in the budget. So they've got all their projects slated just like you've done here, and it's not on the chopping block as of right now. So good news if we get it.
Yeah, we had done if you've been through there, I think it was 2 years ago, we did the resurfacing of the concession all the way up. So
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for bringing that up, because that it is a point. There's still significant infrastructure as a result of amalgamation that's still in the hands of the county of Simcoe across our township, across many places across Simcoe County. And it's always interesting when these pop up, because it's reassuring to know that there's additional funds available to help us do this instead of it all lying on the local municipality. So it's a good example why we work with the county on a lot of, frankly, really expensive critical infrastructures. So good. Paul, anything further? Okay, Mr. Broderick, Councillor Broderick.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Dan, can you expand a little bit on the work needed by Foodland there?
Yep, thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Broderick. If you recall back, I think it was late in the last council year. I think maybe it was October. I brought a council report with discussions regarding I think it was called parking, pedestrians and patios, I think it was. And that through that discussion, Councillor Patterson. How could I forget that name? Councillor Patterson had done some investigation and request some work from staff to investigate the possibility of creating public parking or leasing public parking space from the food land and behind the food land, and what that work would entail to clean the site up and potentially pave it or gravel resurface it, similar to the works that were requested behind the medical center. So that's what it is, to investigate, obtaining a lease or some sort of agreement with the food land property owner and making some improvements to that general area to create additional parking spots.
Thank you.
There we go. Okay, thank you. Is there any other members of council with any questions to Dan? I have a few myself, so I'm just looking give you guys the opportunity. Okay. Take a breath, Dan. You ready?
Good.
Earlier in your presentation, you talked about the line painting. You've indicated in your presentation about $120,000 you're putting in. When I initially saw this, I was excited because I know that it has delivered a needed service across our community and a needed level of confidence to drivers and users of our roads when they see that center line. But then I wrote down a quick note because you said it's for the maintenance of, not any additional adding of any. So can you just clarify for me, are we going to be adding any more east-west road with a center lining, or are we simply doing the maintenance in this proposed budget for the north-south roads?
Through your worship, so the proposal for the $120,000 would be to maintain what we have currently. So in 2022, we did do some painting on the second concession, the 7th, the 9th, the 12th. Some of those east-west roads, I think there's a few others. With the center line. We also, on the roads that we did the north-south, we did the 10th, the 6th, the Fairgrounds Road. In 2022, we added the white edge lines.
Yes.
So by maintaining that, what I'll call is like repainting those lines would be the $120,000 plus all the other painting that we do with the parking lots and the hatch lines and all that kind of stuff accumulate to about $120,000.
Okay, so then this proposed budget item is for the maintenance of what is existing. You're not actually adding any.
That's correct. Not proposing to.
All right. Would you be able to guesstimate what it would cost to add more lines, or how do you calculate that? How do you calculate adding line painting to a road that doesn't have a line paint?
I don't have the number in here in front of me, your worship, but I can go back to last year's tender and probably add a little bit on what it would take to, for a new road, what you essentially need to do is have a cost for pre-marking it. So making sure where the center line.
You have to put the line where it's supposed to be. I get it.
and then painting it, and it's based on, on the truck, it's based on per kilometer. So I can get that number for council if they wish to. As you add those kilometers up, you just add the per kilometer.
I tell you what, then I won't ask for a motion of council at this time, but I will give you some advice, or at least get council to know. I've been asked about the 33-34 side road. I've been asked about the Bata side road. I've been asked about the 36-37 side road. These are all east-west roads across our township. Significant traffic numbers have been observed by residents. Myself, I'm sure our counts would show that those roads have a high volume of traffic, as well as multi-users. Certainly our discussion some months ago about cyclists using our roads, these roads definitely see a lot of cyclists. So I think there's a move in the community that they want to see some of those added to those east-west roads. So in anticipation of that, if council can consider that Dan, if you can provide me with some information, I can prepare a little bit of a motion for council to consider adding those. If it's possible, either the 23 or the 24 budget, but if that's something we can talk about,
Yep, I could provide the.
you're comfortable
I
just
could provide
providing
the,
me?
per kilometer
Sure.
number and with the council, and then maybe at the February 9th, is it?
Yeah.
February
Second.
second meeting. If council wants to.
Yeah.
Propose that to add, then I can do that.
Thank you, Dan, for your cooperation. Now, I got a couple other quick items because I was making notes as you're talking. Concession 10, I know we're going to move ahead with that. At least you've got it presented in your budget as a proposed item to move ahead. Can you tell me, is there any anticipation of doing traffic counts after like post-construction when this sort of project is wrapped up? First of all, to indicate if we've been successful in either reducing the volume of traffic or reducing the speeds on the road. What kind of plan do you have in place to give us some confidence that some of this work is paying off?
Yeah, I think you were, you probably read my mind because, provided that we can keep those signs in place and we get them back from the manufacturer, and I can go into that a little bit. But as you might recall, we had 2 stolen off that road.
Yes, we did.
A few years ago. So,
Yeah.
But that was certainly my intent in the springtime was to on the asphalt portion that was recently resurfaced, is to get some sort of count.
Yes.
Get our speed display signs up there. Now that the speeds have changed, all the signs were installed in the fall. Certainly heard from a few motorists that they might have received a significant fine for traveling on that road. But it may do that in the springtime and just see what the volumes are like, because hopefully,
Sure.
The theory was that if we reduce the speed there, the GPSs will now tell them to use other routes to access Blue Mountain and Collingwood. So see if that's come to fruition or not.
Yeah.
But then as construction starts, we're probably going to get those removed because the numbers won't be realistic because we're close or restrict construction during construction.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that certainly was in one of the lists in the spring to do, for sure.
Okay, well, I would hope you can keep us informed, either at regular council meetings or through communications from your department to council. So we're at least aware that that there is some type of traffic counting and data collection as we've made this change in this road. The speed reduction as well as the grade changes that have happened. Hopefully that will come to fruition. If I may, pardon me. Oh, I'm sorry. Hello, Phyllis. Well, I've got a whole bunch of other things. You want me to defer to you? Let's go right to Phyllis, and then I'll come back, okay? Councillor Janine.
On a happier note, Dan, I've had residents come to me, they've noticed that people are adhering to the 60-kilometer a lot better. In fact, one resident wanted to know who she could send a thank you through to. And that's,
Council.
Anyway, that's just a lot of positive comments about the reduction in speed, most definitely.
For sure, we're hearing it from residents, perhaps not so much by visitors. Okay, I want to refer to your page where you talk about deferred items. The Riverside Drive, the whoop-de-doo on Riverside Drive. Is there anything more we can do? Like I see it's, you've got the word deferred here, and I'm kind of anticipating somehow we got to fix that whoop-de-doo.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And yeah, in maybe Todd recalls the date, but in the fall, we did I call it a significant repair.
Yes, he did. Yes.
I don't know how long it's going to last, how well it's going to last, but it's essentially as much as we can do until we, totally reconstruct that road, because there's lots of drainage issues that we're trying to solve and just patching it over the last, I don't know how long that road, it's about 20 years. It's been patched several times, so. Until we have the funding to reconstruct that road, to more permanent solution, then we'll continue
I
to
know.
maintain it.
Yeah, well, signage would be a big help. We've had some pretty significant and very clear signage saying this is, slow down. It's a, serious issue right here. I don't know what you guys can pull out of the MTO sign book to get even more attention to slow down as they make that gentle turn to the right and back up the hill. It's, yeah. He's on the road closed sign, which is a clear MTO sign, yes, but thank you, Counselor. Yeah. I mean, as much as kidding aside, it can become a real concern for a person who doesn't understand how to traverse that. So I hope we can get that fixed. Right?
Now we'll look to staff to maybe improve the signage and maybe more permanent signage. I know there was some bump signage there and maybe painted on the asphalt, but
I know. Yeah. Okay. Well, I appreciate everything the staff's doing. Obviously, they're keeping it as into the best possible conditions we can, given the fiscal restraints we have to deal with it. So good luck. The other deferral you have in here, the Centerline Road piece, the County Road is the 9 to 7 concession. I get the idea of deferring it, but it will need to have this attention. So is there any idea? Are you just simply looking to 24 or 25, or how long are we going to hold out on that, given the high volume on that road? It gets a lot of pounding on that road.
It's difficult.
I know, I'm smiling
It's a
too.
difficult question to ask, Your Worship. I think I started the design. I think we did the design or started the design in 2021, thinking that we might do it in 2022. So it was deferred last year. It's being deferred again this year.
That's why I bring it up.
Yeah.
So,
as projects come forward, and we maybe had presumed that the increase the cost for 10th concession wasn't going to happen, and that that's pushed everything back another year, right? To go to 4.1 million and trying to find funding from gas tax and other sources to get those works done. But
right.
And these, the costs for these works also increase as the years go on, right? So that's the difficult part of it.
Okay. Thank you. You have one more? Okay, you go. Councillor Beelan's going to go first. I still have one more item, but anyway, go ahead, Councillor Beelan.
Just one comment on those two. I hope the Riverside Drive would be the higher priority, because I really don't think Centerline is as bad as Riverside, but.
It was in my mind in the plan was that Riverside would come first and then Centerline would come next.
Because I travel on both. I think Riverside is more important than the Centerline.
I think it's in worse
I
shape.
think it's a balance too on the actual volume of traffic. Like the road itself on Centerline sees
We've got a lot of people
4 times the
complaining
traffic.
there's too much traffic. Put some
Yeah.
more potholes in there.
Yeah, yeah.
Only kidding.
Thank you, Councillor. The last item I'll have for you, which I know you didn't put in here, but I just want to observe over many council meetings in the past. Council brings forward resolutions that directly impact the Public Works Department and your department that have to do with signs. And so several times we've had discussions about the budget of the signs and signals line in the capital budget or in the operation budget. So given that council's made many recommendations of, to change those things, are you comfortable keeping it at the same, which I believe is where it is right now? Or are you contemplating, or through the treasury, given the number of requests, is this something that we should put an extra 15,000 in or something that supports the decisions that council makes in the future?
Is it specific to something, Your Worship, or like?
No, I'm just saying-
so maintaining what we have is typically what we have in our budget for the signs portion.
Right.
So maintaining, I know we had the discussion about the changing of speed limit signs, for many, many months. And that didn't come through. So, but maintaining what we got, I think, maybe I'll look to Todd, that he's more to the day-to-day stuff, but I think we have a decent supply of, signs that we would need to to replace with other signs, and we keep a supply of stop signs and no parking signs and street signs and all those types of things. We keep a supply just in case. But
Yeah. Okay. So my point was that, yes, you have a supply. Yes, we've purchased these. We keep them in reserve in the event that we need them for either replacement for accidents or whatever, or fading. But I've observed that council has put a lot of pressure on that category of your operating budget. I'll give you an example. When we decided to put up the flashing reds on the Hogback and third, second, when we put up those flashing reds, I mean, that was like, man, that suddenly costs a whole bunch of money, and yet it wasn't anything that had been discussed in the budget of 2020. So my point is your budget able to handle these type of discussions without having to us as council having to amend the budget?
through your worship, yeah, I believe so, for the operating and maintenance of these, it seems to be fine. I haven't noticed any trend in our operating budget on that. If there were a case where, in case of Second and Hogback, that it was what I'll call maybe a bit more capital project, that we asked for, I think it was $25,000 to do that intersection up.
Right.
With the new stop signs and the flashing signs. So that was more of a over and above, like a capital expenditure. But we do have, I believe it's $30,000. It's a set aside in our capital budget for traffic control devices. I think it's
correct
budget for about $30,000, that if we needed to buy a new speed display sign or some traffic calming devices of some sort, which we did last year.
Right.
That we have that $30,000 as a capital purchase.
All right.
Anything that's new.
Dan, you've given me confidence that it's okay. And I'm just saying, as we go through this year and as we approach next year, if council makes decisions about these things, you can remind me as the mayor that I brought it up, but hopefully we don't, eliminate or decimate that budget category in expenditures of buying signs like crazy. So, okay.
And there are other signs that we did purchase. I think there was a discussion. We do have a supply of, they're not share the road signs, but they're an ATV and a bicycle and a motorcycle. I think we do have those signs in the shop. We just need to find time to get them out.
I get it. Yeah.
So there are some of those things that we've purchased in 2022 that we look to have installed in 23.
All right. I'll leave it at that. Is there any other questions for Dan and the roads? Mr. Walker's in there. Hello. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Talked about signs. If the county allows us to put intersection lights, like a street light at Centerline Road, I'm talking Centerline and County Road 9 and MTO for Centerline and County and Highway 26. Whose budget does that come out of? Is that out of ours, or is that out of those that are responsible for the roads?
Your Worship, Councillor Walker, it would be the road authority's responsibility. So the road authority in Centerline and Concession 9 instance, it would be the county. The county has responsibility over that, kind of like Highway 26.
Okay, thank you. I just, I'm going to push that, and I just didn't want us to be short on our end if it was up to us to try and have to finance that. So thank you.
The only where we would have any type of say or maybe some lenience would be within the connecting link portions.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Walker. Dan, anything further? You're good? Okay. Thank you very much. Now, before everybody gets jumping here, I'd like to request a recess for a bio break. We'll return exactly 2 p.m. That sound good? Everybody good? Bio break 2 p.m.